then in a bit more detail. And then, like we spoke a little bit already about why engaging with stakeholders. We've captured a few paragraphs and really kind of short bits from those standards there, the implementation guidance. Really, like I said at the start, that dialogue and engagement, it's really central to your materiality assessment, and that's being emphasized over and over again. And what that really means is that you can't just have one person in your business decide what's material. So, and we have seen that previously, where what we'd like to call the captain's call is someone in the business would just like look at sustainability topics, pick a handful and say, that is material. Like, it needs to be informed by dialogue and by engagement with your stakeholders. And yes, some of them will be internal. You'll learn a lot from them. There's also a whole set of external stakeholders. And like what we said is that they really help you with the identification of both the positive and negative potential impacts there. Of course, there is also about risks and opportunities, and often you get a bit more kind of internally, a better view from the internal stakeholders on that. It's also not just the identification, it's also really understanding the severity of particular impacts and the likelihood that they will happen. And in particular, and I think that is already going a little bit to what you flagged, the CSRD on that due diligence, that will really kind of, down the track focus on, environmental degradation, human rights violations, or human rights in particular. And that's why that's really important to not just identify, but also really think about, like, how do we classify potential impacts? Are there human rights violations, or potentially really think about that? And then ultimately, it's really about transparency as well in your consultation with stakeholders. So it's really important. And that goes through that whole, if you think about back in school, you had algebra, the teacher asks you for the answer, and you give the answer, and they're like, well, how did you get there? And that is really with double materiality, your stakeholder engagement. They also want to know what you did and how you did it. It's not just like we engage with stakeholders and here are the results. It's who did you engage with? How did you do that? So a lot of this transparency is part and parcel what you have to report. So make sure that you document everything. Keep notes. If you have communities and you got community liaison officers, record everything. Who did they speak with and when, and capture photos. And like, especially if you're large footprints there in communities, make sure that you capture a lot of information, but also internally. So there's a lot of like these components that are really important. But in terms